It's the leading cause of death amongst children in this country. And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
But speaking of interviews, let's head over and discuss a viral, super viral clip from Jon Stewart's new show on Apple TV, The Problem with Jon Stewart. He interviewed State Senator Nathan Dahm of Oklahoma, a Republican who was a Second Amendment proponent. And unfortunately, this debate didn't really go very well for the Republican here. He's kind of the debate's getting shared like Jon Stewart owns pro-gun Republican, but it's a lot of the things Jon Stewart says in this are deceptive or dishonest, and we're going to run through it and kind of discuss why that is so and what pushback maybe the Republican could have offered if he had a stronger performance here. So take a listen to this first clip, Hannah, and I want to get your thoughts.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit that takes it down? Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers. 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about less than a fraction of not even 1%, of 1/100 of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
So remember, guys, your red flag should go up when you hear gun deaths, because that's conflating suicides with murders. What we need to talk about is gun homicides. And it's not, in fact, clear that more guns equals more murder overall, is it, Hannah?
Absolutely not. And I think this was a very disappointing interview to watch because for those of us who are Second Amendment activists, there are so many pieces of hard data and numbers that you could throw back to refute Jon Stewart in this moment. And it's clear this person was just not ready for the interview. And I find that really disappointing. Anytime I'm going into an interview, you better believe I've got my facts ready to go. I've got my numbers ready to go. You've got to be prepped because these people are really funny. They like to move around with statistics. I did a whole video on this recently about how they manipulate gun data to lie and to fearmonger and to misconstrue the actual picture. And that's what Jon Stewart is doing in this interview. And unfortunately, the person who's supposed to be there representing our views was not ready to take the heat and not ready to counter it. But since we couldn't be there then, we're going to be there now and step in for him because this is easy to turn on its face. Like, first and foremost, as you said, you cannot conflate gun deaths with gun violence because the vast majority of gun deaths are suicides. And then there are things from like gang violence. But on top of that, the fact that he tries to say as the number of guns and ownership has increased, that gun crime has increased, that's flatly false. There's a Forbes article that I often refer back to that has some really good data in it, both from Pew and the Department of Justice, that basically proves as gun sales have soared, gun crimes have fallen. They say, according to the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics, U.S. gun-related homicides dropped 39% over the course of 18 years, from 18,253 during 1993 to 11,101 in 2011. During the same time period, non-fatal firearm crimes decreased even more, a whopping 69%. The majority of those declines in both categories occurred during the first 10 years of that time frame. Firearm homicides declined from 1993 to 1999, rose 2006, and then declined again through 2011. And they say that those gun crimes certainly aren't diminishing for lack of supply, at least not for law-abiding legal buyers. Last December, the FBI, which this is, 9 years ago, but that December, the FBI recorded a record number of 2.78 million background checks for purchases that month, surpassing a 2.01 million mark set the month before by about 39%. So they were having record-breaking gun sales. That December 2012 figure in turn was up 49% from a previous record on the month before and the previous year. So you see gun sales soaring during the Obama years in particular because Obama kept threatening the Second Amendment. And every time he would do that, people would rush out and buy more guns. And so how many guns were in circulation was doing this on the charts during that whole time period. And at the same time, gun homicides were platooning. I mean, it's crazy that it was happening in that way. And they continue to ignore all of this data and to just, again, move the numbers around and try to confuse people. And it's really unfortunate to see somebody get caught in an interview like this because it should be really easy to turn that back on Jon Stewart.
Yeah, the other thing I would have instantly pointed out is that according to the Institute of Medicine, there's anywhere between 500,000 and 2 million instances of defensive gun use every year in America. And that's in comparison to about 250,000 or 300,000 violent gun crimes. So it's like, when is it going to make us more safe? Now, John. It's literally a net positive to public safety right now. And the way he debates is very obnoxious. And you'll see this in this next clip. It's very patronizing and condescending. Take a listen to this.
That registering is an infringement.
Yes.
Okay. Is voting a right?
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And in some places you have to have a government-issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
You have to be on the voter rolls.
register. You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
So first, I just have to say he's being so condescending, and it's just blah. Like, come on, have a respectful argument here. It's almost painful to listen to, but also, like, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but like, voting is not a constitutional right in the Constitution. It isn't there. Now, there is in practice a right to vote, but it's treated more like a privilege. I mean, we deprive felons of it entirely in like half the country. You don't get it till you're 18. It's very different than something like the Second Amendment, which is explicitly established as an individual right in the Constitution that shall not be infringed. It's a dishonest comparison made in a very disingenuous manner.
He's very smug in this clip. It's a huge turnoff, and you can tell he thinks he's like reeling him into a gotcha moment, but he's totally off base on his very basic premises. You're right. There is no right to vote. In fact, being able to vote was treated as an actual privilege during most of our whole history. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but women couldn't vote. Black people couldn't vote. We continue to deny the ability to vote to many people who have backgrounds. So I don't think it's a apples to apples comparison at all. I also would say that if you want to talk about conditional approval for rights, they already have tons of that on the gun issue, right? The registration issue is just another layer where they want to be able to track you and stalk you and harass you and use the government as a weapon against you. They currently cannot do that. Thank God. They're not able to use a gun registry. And that's a good thing, because throughout history, especially during oppressive regimes of governments, guess what they've done with gun registries? They have used it to stalk down citizens, strip them of their guns, lock them up, and take the people who actually could defend society out first. That is why you don't want a gun registry. You already do have many other conditions on gun ownership. You cannot buy a gun if you're under 21 in many areas, certainly under 18. Most states make you go through a big dog and pony show where you have to pay to get a license. You have to pay to go to a firearm class. You have to do a training. You have to do all these things that are very expensive just to basically own a gun and carry it on you. And so to act like it's just this free-for-all, that's what they love to push. There's just huge free-for-all around gun rights, and there's no parameters on it whatsoever. Like, get out of here. That's completely false. I think you know it's false. If you don't know it, then you're too uneducated to be speaking about gun issues.
There's also a legit reason that you have to register to vote is you have to count the votes and make sure nobody's voting twice. Like, that's obviously necessary. Whereas there's not a legit reason why you would need that. And also the idea of voter registry, yeah, that's going to stop a mass shooter who's not stopped by all the laws against mass shooting, but that registry is really going to stop. It's just, the whole thing is silly and pedantic. But the most frustrating part for me was Jon Stewart goes on to make a very misleading and emotionally charged claim about child gun deaths. Take a listen to this.
It's the leading cause of death amongst children in this country. And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that, because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
So there's so many levels of dishonesty there. But firstly, I'll just say the notion that guns are the biggest cause of death for children is very misleading for a few reasons. One is that children don't die very often, right? So there's very few things that regularly kill children because they're young and healthy. So for something to be the highest source of gun death, of children's dying, is tragic, but it doesn't actually tell you a ton. It's also based on a very faulty source. So that number, that statistic, calls from CDC data. And he says it's the leading cause of death for children. But that data actually counts those aged 1 to 19. That's not what most people think of when they hear children. It literally includes teenagers and legal adults 18 and 19 who are by definition not children. So it's not a real statistic, frankly. It's just misleading. And it totally leaves out that the majority of those deaths or suicides are gang violence, not school shootings. That's not the leading cause of death of kids in America. In fact, according to the conservative rag known as the Washington Post, the statistical likelihood of any given public school student being killed by a gun in school on any given day since 1999 was roughly 1 in 614 million. I mean, you can't, it's also like, even if you do think it's a huge cause of death for children, and it is significant, it's like, well, we disagree about how to make them safe. We don't think more laws and bans will accomplish that. It's not that we don't care, like he says. That's just such bad faith. The entire thing is made in such bad faith.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to know is that the number one way kids are killed in the country is through accidents. And that makes absolute sense because kids are not likely to die from any of the other things that adults commonly die from. They're not that likely to get sick. They're not that likely to commit suicide. They're not that likely to have, a mental health issue. They are most likely, if they're going to die by a tragic accident. And that's terrible. And gun accidents are one of those kinds of ways that they can die. I think the conversation then should be about how to make sure that we teach parents gun safety, that we teach parents how to keep guns in a position where they're locked and kids can't get to them, right? There are many things you could do to ensure that. My dad did that growing up. I had great gun safety education. I wouldn't have touched those things with a 10-foot pole. We do need to have more personal responsibility and education on those things. But when you try to make it sound like this is all a gun homicide issue or school shooting issue, you simply fearmonger parents. You continue to make guns the problem versus the safety of the home and educational standards, and you don't help anything at all. And I think it is just completely disingenuous. Again, if you don't know this, if you're giving an interview on a national platform and you don't know this, you are not equipped to be talking about gun issues whatsoever. And if you're going to open your mouth on them, you should at least be informed enough to be honest about what this is actually show.
Yeah, I just found the whole interview extremely grating and very representative of everything that's wrong with modern media, which is factual flexibility, emotional demagoguery, all in pursuit of owning the other side. But of course, people are clapping like seals as the clips are shared virally because they don't know enough about it and they just nod and say, yes, own the bad Republican. We care about kids the most. Give me a break.